Well, welcome everybody. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it greatly. And learning to lean, now it's my turn. Time to lean on Jesus. Let's go. Before we start, I'm gonna just, if it's cool, I'm gonna say a quick little prayer. Lord, I just want to thank you for this time. Thank you for allowing us to be here and gather together in your name. And I just pray and ask you to come now, that you would equip me and Victoria and strengthen us, God, to speak the words that you want spoken. That, our ears would be open to hear, and that it would give us hearts and minds to receive your truth, Father, and that we would leave this place closer to you and closer to each other as well, and that you would just bless this night, Father, and that you get your perfect will done. Meet each and every need in this place, I pray, God, and cause us to leave uplifted and encouraged in you. We pray and ask this in your name. Amen. Well, with that being said, how many of you here like to receive blessings? Raise your hands. How many like to receive blessings in the house? A lot of hands. Okay, now how many of you guys like to go through sufferings? Raise your hands. No. What? I thought there would be just as many hands. Dang it. Well, as you guys know, as much as we would like to receive the blessings and, skip the suffering part, unfortunately you can't have one without the other. And so this leads to my sermon title, calling Sufferings to Blessings. So fun. I forgot to warn you, I'm sorry, this is not a sugar-coated sermon. So if you're here for truth, then you're in the right place. Otherwise, I'm sorry. It's a truth sermon tonight. You can't have one without the other. Suffering is a part of life, and it's a pattern that we're called to as Christians. And I just have a few scriptures here. 1 Timothy 1, 15-16 says this. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. However, for this reason I obtained mercy, that in me first Jesus Christ might show all long-suffering as a pattern to those who are going to believe on him for everlasting life. 1 Peter 5, 8-10 says this. Be sober, be diligent, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. But may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. And finally, Hebrews 12, 5-11 says this. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens, and scourges every son whom he receives. If you endure chastening, God deals with you as with sons. For what son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. Furthermore, we've had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the fathers of spirits and live? For they indeed for a few days chastened us as seems best to them, but he for our profit, though we may be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful nevertheless. Afterward it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. In order to get to the destination, you first got to go through the journey. And the same goes with God's blessings. He won't give you something that you're not prepared for. Suffering is a tool that is used to help us get there. It is through the broken places and dark moments of suffering that God comes and makes himself real to you the most. It's in these moments where we find out where our strength comes from and where we learn the greatest lessons, giving us wisdom from God. There are many examples of this in the Bible, how people chose the path of suffering to gain the greatest of blessings. One example that I can think of is the life of Jesus. He loved us so much that he chose to come down to earth to live like us, to be able to relate to us. He became the spotless lamb that would take away the sins of the world. But, of course, that blessing would cost him his life. He even begs the Father to take the suffering away from him, yet he says, not my will, but yours be done. And you can read that in Mark 14, 32-42, if you'd like. He loved us unto death. Even think about this. He loved us unto death, even those that hated and mocked him. He was willing to suffer death for these people. The ones that, would spit on his face and call him names. He was willing to die for these people so they could receive the greatest of blessings, a relationship with him and a fresh, clean start. Isn't that just beautiful? God is so good, honestly. that I can think of is the story of Moses. He was raised in a place that he did not know, and he was separated from the ones that loved him the most. When he was of age, he chose to go back to his people to help them, leaving luxury for suffering. It was in this time of suffering in the wilderness where he found out his calling from God and fulfilled it to set his people free from slavery, which you can read in Hebrews 11:24-26. And lastly, in the spirit of testimony nights that we've had here, I thought it would be good to share my life story with you guys, so you can hear stories about things that I've overcome. As you all know, DFGC here is like my second home to me. I was born and raised in a loving Christian home. At the age of 3, I was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder, which is a lower form of autism, so like socializing, phone calls, things like that was just really weird for me. But at the age of 7, Jesus came and set me free from most of that through people praying over me in this very church. Why not all of it, though, you ask? Why not all of it? Well, he wanted me to be able to understand and relate to people that go through the same struggles. And I can't understand or relate unless I suffer and go through it myself. So that's why I went through what I went through. Being diagnosed with this and being a Christian, it made school life very hard for me. I didn't have any friends growing up. Recess for me mostly consisted of me reading my Bible and listening to music on my Walkman. I was a reject, a loser, a freak, and alone. Or this is how I did, and I still somewhat, see my past self as. In high school, things did get a bit better, though. I even made a few friends, which is awesome. One I'd see from time to time, and I still to this day. One I reconnected with, and one of them soon became my sister-in-law. In 2012, the Lord had spoken something to me that shook me to my core. This was something I knew would be life-changing. So from that time onwards, I chose to leave my life in His hands, not knowing where it would take me. I chose to let Him lead me and guide me to truth. Since then, I saw my brother get engaged and married. I got to see my sister, run after her dreams of being a paramedic. But for myself, I still felt like an alien in this world, that it didn't really fit in anywhere, and I was just simply stuck while everyone else advanced in life. I had my cat go missing on me after having him for a year. I had a friendship of over 10 years break because of something I simply said. Hold on a moment. Yeah, that's true. Something, a mistake. Oh no, I lost my spot. Forgive me. Okay, something I said. I even went to young adults groups as well to find out that I didn't even fit in or belong there as well. The worst of it, though, was when my grandmother passed away on Christmas Day in 2018. As one of the people that helped care for her at home, it felt like my life had lost purpose. I was back at square one again, feeling like a failure in this world. Things got so bad, I even pleaded to God and asked Him to come intervene and change things quickly for me, or else I was going to die. That was literally my prayers to God. Like, it was word for word pretty much, Within a week, because God is so good, within a week, He brought a few young adults out to a coffee house here. And they told me that a young adults group at the MC on Tuesdays, you should go check it out. And I was like, all right, sure I will. And what I didn't know was by me stepping through those doors that night was God, changing my whole life. The start of changing everything. He did so much for me. He brought so many friends along the way. I gained confidence in myself. Jesus literally changed my whole world. 2019 was a blessed year, but my story doesn't end there. It's 2022, still got years to go. Since then, a lot of things have shifted and changed. I was still battling those past feelings and fears, things that I thought, I would never have to feel or deal with ever again, but unfortunately that was not the case. Near the end of the third lockdown in 2021, I had come to the realization that a lot of the friends that I thought were really there for me, they weren't there for me. I had put them on these thrones in my mind, a place where they simply didn't belong. I had to mentally take them off of these thrones and place them where everyone else was. And that was really, really hard for me to go through. Especially seeing as these were the friends that showed me what true love and friendship was. It was a hard time for me. I was blessed though to have my friend Victoria over here, who I met in November of 2020, along with a few other people be there for me, but I simply was not content with that. I wanted something more. On Facebook, I posted a photo of a rock I painted, and a friend happened to notice it. The rock was a painting of a broken heart with a band-aid and a scripture on it. He ended up coming over to my house to hang out and see what was going on with me. He said he wanted to be a better friend to me, that like an egg, he wanted to crack my shell and get to know me better. And well, that's exactly what happened. We became the bestest of friends. I had him, Victoria, and JC Holla in my corner. I was now content. Summer of 2021 was a summer like no other, and it took a shocking turn when me and this guy friend decided to take things to the next level on September 2nd. He was the first guy that I ever dated, and things seemed to be going really well, but then we broke up January 22nd of this year. I was so confused, I didn't understand why. I was like, God, why? This makes no sense, especially seeing as I left the choice with him. But that's the thing, I left the choice with him. It was up to him what he wanted to do, and this was his will, it had to happen. He used this situation to draw me even closer to him, to experience his love in a new way, in a new and deeper way. Through this, he had corrected me, he'd given me wisdom, and he used my broken piece of heart to help heal many other broken hearts. The way that God came to me and healed my heart caused me to see and know that Jesus is truly all that I need. It wasn't until that experience, honestly, I tell you, it was, God is so good. Recently, I went to a cottage in Buckhorn for some vacation time. And this was the place where I first recognized the sparks with this guy last year. I knew it would be hard going back there, but I knew I had to face it, as much as I didn't want to, but I did. I asked God many times for him to come and set me completely free, and he did for the most part. I can honestly say that one of the highlights of that trip was the sweet times that I had with Jesus, talking with him, hearing from him, reading his word, having confirmations and encouragement come my way. In the midst of the suffering, he was with me, and I got blessed by staying there. I was feeling down and being tormented in my mind, but I left that place uplifted, joyful, and hopeful for the future. That's our Jesus, man. That's all I gotta say. That's Jesus for you. It's when you're at your end, that is when God is able to step in and give you a new beginning. Yes. I'm a JC freak and I have no shame. It's who I am, alright? It's who I am and the person that I was born to be. It's in this place where I don't need people's approval or followings. I know just as long as I have Jesus by my side, I know I can get through anything. And none of this would have been possible if I hadn't have gone through all the suffering that I've been through. And it has brought me great blessings and blessings that I have yet to receive as well. And so in conclusion, I say all of that rambling mumbo-jumbo for this. One simple question I have to ask you all, which is this. How far are you willing to go? And how much are you willing to give up and pay to receive the blessings that God has for you? That is my question. He is not the God of fast food blessings. I'm sorry. I know we want a quick snap of the finger, but that's not how God works. He's a God of 5-star blessings, all right? His blessings are like paying to go to a fancy restaurant. Sure, it costs you a pretty penny, and you may have to wait a while, but what you end up with is a 5-star meal that's even better than what you could ever think, ask, or imagine. His blessings are not cheap, but they are oh so worth it. Yes. You will not be disappointed when you give your life to God and leave it in his hands. He's the only one that can create beauty from ashes, turn mourning into joy, and make suffering become blessings. Yes. And so to end off with a few more scriptures, and I also have a Jesus calling thing that Emily sent to me while I was waiting at the cottage. She sent me something, and it was really good, so much I have to share. But Matthew 5:10-12 says this. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you, and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. John 15:18-21 says this. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also. But all these things they will do to you for my name's sake, because they do not know him who sent me. 1 Peter 3:17 says this, "For it is better, if it is the will of God, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil." I'm going to repeat that one. "For it is better, if it is the will of God, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil." And lastly, 1 Peter 4:12-19 says this, "Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing has happened to you. But rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory is revealed, you may also be glad with exceeding joy. If you are reproached for the name of Christ, blessed are you. For the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. On their part he is blasphemed, but on your part he is glorified. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, a thief, an evildoer, or as a busybody in other people's matters. Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this matter. For the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. And if it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God? Now, if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where will the ungodly and the sinner appear? Therefore let those who suffer according to the will of God commit their souls to him in doing good as to a faithful Creator." And lastly, I want to read this thing from a Jesus Calling book that Emily had that she sent to me, which I thought was really good. "I am training you in patient endurance. This lesson is not for the faint-hearted. However, it is a rich blessing, one aspect of sharing in my kingdom and my suffering. Since my kingdom is eternal, it is of infinite value. And I have made it clear that sharing in my sufferings is necessary for sharing in my glory. Moreover, this experience produces real benefits in the here and now, character. Patient endurance can be developed only through hardship, so make every effort to welcome the very problem that you dread. Bring it into my presence with thanksgiving and acknowledge your willingness to endure it as long as I deem necessary. Ask me to take this dark, ugly thing and transform it into something lovely. I can weave bright golden strands of glory into the most heart-wrenching situation. It may take a long time for the lovely pattern to emerge, but this waiting can build patience. Rejoice, beloved, for I am polishing your character till it shines with the light of my glory." And that is the word I have for you guys today. And it's crazy because I wrote this sermon back in June. Tweaked it a little bit, but it's back in June. And yeah, it's just interesting to see what happens. All right, Victoria, let's see what you have to say. God bless you all.
It's weird. I've never been up here. It's like, what in the world is going on? Okay. All right. So how many people here have ever been to Starburger down the road? Yeah? If you haven't been, you seriously need to go. Like, seriously, tomorrow, go. Seriously, go. It's so good. All right. So at the beginning of June, Emily and I actually were down at Starburger. I thought it'd be really fun. We'd gone there once last summer. And we got our food, we sat down, and I looked at the receipt as we finished eating, and I went, this is kind of expensive. Like, we paid this much money for 2 burger meals, like what in the world? And she said something like this, boils down to whether you're willing to pay the price or not. So, following Christ comes with a price tag. And at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves honestly if we are willing to pay that price. Many in the Bible were willing to pay that price. And one example is the disciples. So if you look at Matthew 4, verses 18 to 22, that's the initial time when we read in the Bible where Jesus is calling the disciples. And it says this, "While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.' Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him." So Jesus called every disciple to leave behind the life they'd known, to walk in a higher life with him. If you note in Matthew, it said, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." These disciples had a choice between answering the call and continuing on in the life that they had known before Christ. They could have literally been like, yeah, sounds great, but I'm good. Bye, see ya. I'm good with where I am. They had to be willing in their hearts to surrender their lives to follow Christ and eventually go higher in him. After Jesus ascends, these same disciples were tasked with taking the word to the nations. And on top of this, the disciples were persecuted for their faith. They found opposition of Jewish leaders. Others who were called later, like Paul, found suffering and trials again, persecution as well. But this is inevitable because the world often clashes, actually, it usually always clashes, with those who choose to live in Christ. Coincidentally, I also have John 15, verses 18 to 20 here. If the world hates you, and I'm just going to read it again, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than its master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. So there's a price tag when it comes to choosing Christ, yes? And these disciples were willing to pay that price. However, some people try to keep one foot in the world and one foot in God. And you can't do that, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but it can lead to some very messy situations. A time will come and we will have to make that choice. And for a lot of people, a time will come where the heart will simply be revealed. And here's one example. So John 12, verses 1 to 6. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume, but Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, for who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Judas initially chose to follow Jesus, but his heart here reveals itself, and he continued to choose something of this world, money. He would betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, but though he gained earthly possessions, the price he paid as a result was more costly than the disciples, who gave their heart and their lives to Christ and continued diving into him. In this time, some are wavering between choosing God and the world, trying to keep one foot in God and the other in the world. And while lips have said yes, the heart has not. According to Matthew 6:24, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Again, we can only choose to serve one. But here's the thing, God brings these kinds of things to our attention not because he wants to hurt us or make us feel guilty. It's because he loves us and he wants us to choose him. The disciples were called by Jesus into a higher life in him, and they were willing to pay that price. And as I mentioned earlier, many did die for their faith. In fact, I think all of them died for their faith. But here's some encouragement for you. God always has his arms open wide. Like Waymaker, even when I don't see it, you're working. Or there's another song, I think, called Reckless Love, where it's like he's always running after us. And that just came to my mind. Though the price seems like a lot to follow Christ and choose the higher path in him, it's worth it. It's so worth it. Just talk to anyone here who's been a Christian for 30 plus years, who are still diving into Christ. They will tell you it's worth it. It's through him that we can do what he calls us to do. In fact, it's not us doing anything, but him doing it through us. As I was praying a couple months ago, I sensed God say the following: the price is high, but I am higher. There's encouragement in knowing that God can work in us and through us. helping us every time we need to surrender or do practically everything. All he asks is a willing heart. An intimate walk with God is something that is so beautiful, it cannot be compared to anything. There's absolutely nothing like it anywhere in the world, in the universe. So it boils down to this question. Are you willing to pay the price and answer that higher calling that Jesus has in your life? I'm done. There you go.